There's a lot of other stuff we didn't get a chance to talk about today. We didn't even mention that we're making Black Panther 2. Didn't come up. We didn't mention the fact that Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is coming. We didn't have time to talk about Captain Marvel 2, by the way. I didn't even have time to talk about the Fantastic Four. There's no time left to talk about mutants and how mutants.
Oh my god. Oh. Whew. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, the ghost of E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews. I just heard the amazing news from the Marvel Comic-Con panel, and well, I'm dead. There was a ton of amazing news that was brought to us, and I want to bring all of that to you in chronological order with a bit more breakdown and some of my own personal insight on what I think is going to happen with Marvel's future. So sit back and relax and let's talk about some of this fantastic news. Yeah, I'm still dead. Okay, just a heads up, spoiler alert. Obviously, this is going to contain a lot of spoilers for many Marvel movies, so if you haven't watched everything up to Spider-Man Far From Home, you're going to get a lot of spoilers, so spoiler alert, be aware. Come back later after you've caught up. Anyway, for the rest of us, let's get started. So the very first Marvel MCU property that we have coming up is going to be Black Widow, and that's going to be in May 2020. We do know a couple of things. One thing is that it is going to be a prequel. It's going to take place after the events of Captain America Civil War, which I've always kind of considered to be very interesting, because if we've noticed one thing in the MCU by now, it's the fact that whenever there's a prequel done, it's usually for a reason to inform us about something in the present. I mean, otherwise, why would we need a Black Widow prequel, right? Unless Marvel's trying to tell us, hey, you need to know what happens in the past, because now in the future, this thing or this event will make a lot more sense. So they're going to go back and fill in some gaps that we clearly didn't know about, and who knows what that might be. Maybe we find out why Black Widow turned her hair blonde instead of red. I do have another idea of why we're getting this prequel, but I'll get to that in just a second. We also know that in this movie, Taskmaster is going to be the primary villain. Now, I've got to say, I absolutely love the fact that Taskmaster is coming to the MCU. If you know anything about this character, Taskmaster is basically this masked villain. He's kind of like a mercenary, and he's got like photographic memory, and what he does is anytime he fights someone, he remembers their fighting style, and he's able to use that against them the next time they go against each other. So he's an incredibly dangerous villain, and the only way to beat him is literally to just keep surprising him with different maneuvers or different tactics. So I'll be very anxious to see how they utilize this character, and I'm really hoping that he comes back in future Marvel movies, mainly because the more he gets to fight different types of people, the more dangerous he becomes. And it would just be a terrible waste if they just went ahead and killed this character in this Black Widow movie. Another interesting thing with this Black Widow movie is the casting of Florence Pugh, who many are suspecting is going to play the character of Yelena Belova. Yelena is an interesting character because she also went through the Red Room program just like Natasha did, except of course Natasha is just a little bit more lethal and she's probably more superior. And from what I was reading, I heard that a lot of the people at Comic-Con were able to actually see some footage of both Yelena and Natasha going at it. Now, if I'm gonna just assume or predict anything, Florence Pugh is probably a really good reason as to why they're making this a prequel, just because, well, we already know Black Widow's fate, but there could be a possibility that Yelena could step into the present, into becoming the new Black Widow. Don't know, just putting it out there, might happen. Who knows? Anyway, the rest of the cast for this movie does look pretty interesting. We've got Rachel Weisz, whose character has also been through the Black Widow training program. and the rest of her character is a little bit of a mystery. Then we've got David Arbor from Stranger Things, and he's going to play the character of Alexei, but he also goes by another code name, which is called the Red Guardian. And if you didn't know, the Red Guardian is kind of like the Russian version of Captain America, so that'll be pretty interesting to see what they do with his character. Next up, we've got the Disney Plus streaming show of Falcon and the Winter Soldier coming in the fall of 2020. As we know from the end of Endgame, Captain America is old and retired, and he's passed over the mantle to Falcon. And yes, Anthony Mackie did confirm that he will be donning the Captain America costume in this new Disney Plus series that is reminiscent from the comics. I also think one of the most exciting pieces of news for this series is that Daniel Bruhl will be returning as Baron Zemo. If you recall, Zemo was the primary villain from Captain America Civil War. He was the one that framed Bucky and basically pit the Avengers against one another when he revealed the deep dark secret about Bucky killing Tony Stark's parents. So Zemo is not the type of villain to be underestimated. Plus, I'm also hearing that Zemo might bring back the mask that he typically wears in the comics. So that'll be very interesting to see. What I'm personally hoping for with this Falcon and Winter Soldier series is to see how people in the MCU will adjust to having Sam Wilson as Captain America. I think most comic fans know that dealing with social and even political issues is nothing new for Marvel Comics. So I'll be interested in seeing if Marvel Studios will be bold enough to address some of those issues with Falcon being the new Captain America. Next up, we have the Eternals coming in November 2020. I'll admit that my knowledge on the Eternals isn't as deep as I'd like it to be, and that's okay. The cast alone is definitely worth the price of admission to see what they do with this property. Marvel has shown us that they want to highlight lesser known characters and stories so that way people can have a fresh experience with them. Now, what I loosely know about the Eternals is that they came from the Marvel legend Jack Kirby back in the late 70s. If I recall, the Celestials created both the Eternals and the Deviants in some way, shape, or form. And just as a FYI, we've already met a very famous Deviant named Thanos. So maybe this Eternals movie will give us a young Thanos or maybe even a baby Thanos. We also don't know when this movie is supposed to take place. It might be a couple thousand years, it could be millions, we don't really know yet. What's kind of cool is that in the comics, the Eternals were a superhero group who would oftentimes be mistaken as gods, and they would kind of like be the mythical figures in legends. Very similar to how Thor was considered to be towards humans. But like I said, the cast alone is enough for me to be interested, and I can't wait to see what they do with this. Coming in February 2021, we're gonna get Shang Chi. Let me tell you, I am so excited for this. I love martial arts movies, and I think this will be a slam dunk if Marvel really focuses on the fight choreography in this movie. I'm just gonna keep it real with you. Yeah, give me an interesting character and story and all that jazz, but I'm coming to see Shang-Chi kick some serious butt. Shang-Chi in the comics is known to be like one of the top 5 best fighters in all of Marvel, period. So Shang-Chi has been cast, and I haven't followed this actor's career extensively, but I do know that he's trained a lot in martial arts and does his own stunts, so that's a definite plus. But probably the best news with Shang-Chi is that we're finally going to get the real Mandarin to appear. Many fans were disappointed with the Mandarin fake out in Iron Man 3. Now, Marvel did try to fix that in one of their Marvel one-shots by saying that the real Mandarin did actually exist, but that didn't really appease some people, probably because most people didn't even see that one-shot. But either way, as long as Shang-Chi focuses on some epic, and I'm talking about some dope, memorable, awesome looking fight scenes, this movie should not fail. And what I'm specifically talking about is the same way that Daredevil had that memorable and awesome hallway fight scene, Shang-Chi needs to have its own memorable fight scene that we can still be talking about from years down the line. Alright, now moving on, we've got WandaVision coming in the spring of 2021. Now, Elizabeth Olsen, aka the Scarlet Witch, and Paul Bettany, aka Vision, are coming back for this Disney Plus show. Now, this show always sounded weird to me because I heard things like it was going to be in the 1950s, it was going to be like a black and white show, almost like a Leave It to Beaver type of show. But there were 2 bits of news that really got me more excited about this at the Comic-Con panel. The The first is the announcement that Teyonah Parris is going to play the role of the adult version of Monica Rambeau. We already saw a younger version of Monica in Captain Marvel with subtle teases about how much she really looks up to Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel. Also, in the comics, Monica Rambeau is very significant because, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but she was the first to take on the mantle of Captain Marvel after the passing of Mar-Vell. And I say that because after Mar-Vell passed away, Carol Danvers was going around as being labeled Ms. Marvel at the time. I'm very curious to see how this show is going to use Monica in the MCU because in the comics, she is stupid powerful. I mean, she's able to manipulate energy in so many ways that it's just nuts. So I'm assuming they'll have to power her down, similar to how they had to power down Scarlet Witch. And that leads me to the second bit of news that excites me so much for WandaVision. And that is that the events of this show are going to tie in to the upcoming Doctor Strange sequel. Now, I'll come back to this point in just a bit, because the next show that's going to be coming out is Loki, which is going to also come out in the spring of 2021. Now, we still don't have that many details about this show specifically, but what we do know is that it will show Loki interacting in the MCU history in a way, and that will address the bigger question of where did Loki go when he took the Space Stone? So that means that this show will follow the progress of the Loki from Avengers Endgame that we saw pick up the Tesseract and escape. This also implies that this Loki is an alternate version of the character, meaning that the Loki we've all known really is dead from Avengers Infinity War. If you've been following my channel, I'm not really a fan of that death, and I've offered my own theory as to how Marvel could maybe keep Loki within the MCU history, and you can definitely go check that out if you're interested. Anyway, Loki coming back is rather interesting because this is supposedly going to be the Loki from 2012 who just came from getting his tail whooped by the Avengers and the Hulk. But this creates a potential issue and a big question that I have because Marvel just got done retconning Loki after his death in Infinity War. They said that the Mind Stone had been affecting Loki's mind all this time and it was making him do all those bad things, you know, like trying to take over the Earth and stuff. So I wonder, are they going to address that in this show? And if they don't, I do think there's going to be a major inconsistency. And the potential issue that would happen is if Loki was doing all this terrible stuff because of the Mind Stone, and let's just say he's away from the Mind Stone after he picks up the Tesseract, does that mean that Loki starts becoming good again and maybe less tyrannical thinking? And let's just say he stays in the same crazy mindset that he was in before, is it still the Mind Stone working? I mean, to me, it just kind of raises more questions. So I'm just very curious to see how they address that. But anyway, let's move on to May 2021, where we get Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now this I am super excited for. The title in itself is what's getting me pumped up for this. Back in 2016, Doctor Strange gave us a glimpse of a multiverse. Then in Spider-Man Far From Home, we were faked out by Mysterio, you know, in terms of the existence of a multiverse. And now Doctor Strange 2 is coming down to double down on this multiverse concept. Now hold on one second. Now this is something that's a little confusing and it's a little frustrating with Marvel. In the first Doctor Strange movie, when they started talking about different universes or the multiverse or whatever, it was coming off as if those different things were places. They were like dimensions. So it's kind of like, yeah, you can go to the quantum realm or you can go to the dimension where Dormammu is. So when they were talking about the multiverse in Doctor Strange, it sounded more like they were talking about going to different places. Almost like Thor when he talks about the 9 realms. You know, it's like, oh, you can go to this place or that place. There are multiple dimensions all together. Okay, cool. We get to Avengers Endgame and then they want to start talking about multiple realities, and these realities started dealing more so with time. So let's say if you go back in time and you change some stuff up, you could mess around and create an alternate reality, which would mean that you would have 2 different versions of 2 different times or whatever. Like, you get into the whole time aspect of things, and that did not seem to coincide with how they were describing the multiverse in the first Doctor Strange movie. So in my opinion, it does feel a little confusing, but it seems like Marvel is just putting the time and the space all together and just saying, saying, yep, all of it's just all multiverse. Anyway, one interesting aspect about this movie is coming from the director, who wanted this sequel to go back to the roots of the original Doctor Strange comics, which is to say that this sequel is going to be more of a horror. Kevin Feige went on to say that Doctor Strange 2 is going to be the first full MCU horror movie. It's going to be PG-13, and according to Feige, we're all going to love it. Now, I'll admit, when it comes to horror, I'm a huge fan. I love the horror genre, and Scott Derrickson just isn't at the top of my list when I think of great horror directors. Now, I'm not saying he's terrible or anything, but what I am saying is that I just wasn't a fan of the Sinister movies because those movies relied on really cheap jump scares more so than actually generating genuine fear in various ways. However, needless to say, because of the range of elements and different things that Doctor Strange can bring to the table, I'm pretty confident that Derrickson is going to do a good job with this movie. And to make things even better, as I mentioned before, Scarlet Witch is supposed to be joining in a supporting role for this movie too. Now, I do have an interesting theory as to how this team up could work out with Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange working together in their movie, but it is going to take more time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that a separate video, and I'll let you guys know what my theory is behind Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange and the very, very good payoff that it might bring to the MCU. So let's move on to summer of 2021 and talk about Marvel's What If. This will be an animated series for Disney Plus where a number of MCU actors will come in to do some voice acting. Probably staying in the same vein of the multiverse, these animated stories will present alternate realities in the Marvel Universe. We also have Jeffrey Wright serving as like the narrator, as he also takes on the role of the Watcher. What I'm more curious about with all of this is whether any of these stories will have any real connection to the MCU, or will they just be random stories that we can forget about once we see them? My guess is that if we do keep messing with the multiverse, then there's a chance that this animated series may dig deeper into things that we might get teased in previous shows or movies by the time that this gets released. For instance, it's already been confirmed that Chris Evans and Haley Atwell will be part of the voice cast, where Steve Rogers actually becomes Iron Man and Atwell's Peggy Carter becomes Captain America. I mean, that'll be a very interesting what if, don't you think? Alright, another Disney Plus show that was announced was Hawkeye, coming in the fall of 2021. Jeremy Renner will return as Hawkeye, and we will be introduced to Kate Bishop. In the comics, Kate Bishop was trained by Hawkeye and eventually takes up the mantle. If I'm not mistaken, we might also see Clint Barton's adventures as Ronin and fill in some of those gaps as well. That's all we really know for now, although I do have a feeling that this could possibly tease something even bigger in the future. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if this Hawkeye streaming show were a springboard for something like the West Coast Avengers or even the Great Lakes Avengers, where you basically have a bunch of younger superheroes coming together to kind of be like the next coming of the Avengers. But hey, we'll see. Moving on, we go to November of 2021 and we have Thor Love and Thunder. So Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson will be coming back for this Thor sequel, but the biggest news is that Natalie Portman is returning as Jane Foster. Not only will she be coming back, but it would appear as though she's also going to take on the mantle of Thor. Now, for those of you who don't know, this did happen in the comics, and it was a rather popular story. So this isn't one of those random gender swaps that comes out of nowhere. I think it's important to also know that the actual Thor will still be around, so it's not like he's going to be replaced in a literal sense. We don't really know much about the plot, but I do think we'll have a similar situation to when Captain America lifted the hammer and got Thor's power, and remember, we all love that. And maybe we'll have her fighting with Thor as he carries Stormbreaker. Either way, I'm just happy that Taika Waititi is back on board because his vision with Thor, I think, has worked out the best. But there is one looming question that's been bugging me, and the question is, how is Jane Foster going to get Thor's power when Mjolnir was destroyed in Thor Ragnarok? And in Avengers Endgame, Captain America returned Thor's hammer back to Asgard in the year 2013. So I do wonder, how exactly is Jane Foster going to get that power from Thor? If you all have any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Okay, so those were all the movies and shows that were announced, but that wasn't the last of the news. One of the biggest surprises at this Comic-Con panel was the announcement of Blade being played by Mahershala Ali. According to Kevin Feige, after winning the Best Supporting Actor for Green Book, Ali called up Marvel and told them that he wanted to be Blade. Feige said that it was hard to turn that offer down, so here we are. I have to say, I didn't even consider Ali to be in the running because I thought that Marvel wouldn't use him because of his great role as Cottonmouth, which I think most people will agree was cut way too short. But now it would appear that Netflix shows don't really matter to the MCU. I guess we should have seen that coming, as they did cast Alfre Woodard in Civil War, even though she was already on Luke Cage. I think this Blade casting gives me even more hope because it also means that other Netflix actors can now come join the MCU. So yeah, Charlie Cox, come on down. John Barenthal, come on down. Kristen Ritter, come on down. Not you, Finn Jones. Not you. Mike Coulter, come on down. As a fan of the previous Blade films, I also understand the initial feelings of disappointment that some people might have with Wesley Snipes not being recast for the role. But listen, it's gonna be okay. Ali doesn't have to be a world-renowned martial artist to play the role of Blade. That's why we have amazing stunt doubles to put in that work. Besides, can you imagine if we had Blade tag team with Spider-Man to hunt down Morbius? Oh my goodness, so much goodness is to come. And I mean that too because we still have a bunch of other Marvel movies that were briefly mentioned by Kevin Feige. He was unfortunately running out of time. Most of these movies are either in the super early stages of development or they haven't started any type of production yet. Feige also went on to say that basically everything that was recently announced or that had a date, as I mentioned earlier, is all going to be considered within Phase 4 of the MCU. So that means this Phase 4 is only going to be 2 years worth of movies and shows. As for Marvel's future and maybe Phase 5, we have Black Panther 2, Captain Marvel 2, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and the Fantastic Four, all of which shall be coming soon. Now, Kevin Feige did also mention the word mutants, and he said that mutants are coming, but I think that he really meant that more in a general sense rather than an actual movie being called Mutants. So one thing we do know is that there won't be an X-Men movie for at least a couple of years because Marvel already had this stuff planned out before that Fox deal went through. Now my guess is that we'll see some mutants get sprinkled in here or there, or at least we'll get some clues that will lead up to the big X-Men movie down the line. I do have my own theories on how they can do that, but of course I'll get working on that in a separate video later. Now if you were wondering about Spider-Man 3 and whether it was still going to happen, it might, but that would be something for Sony to announce and not Marvel. Now Sony has been releasing Spider-Man movies like every 2 years, so maybe we'll get Spider-Man 3 in 2021. Something else to consider is that there are 3 other dates that Marvel has slotted for the future, and those are February 18th, 2022, May 6th, 2022, and July 29th, 2022. My guess is that Black Panther 2 is going to take over that February slot, that May slot might go to Captain Marvel, and July could possibly go to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. As for the Fantastic Four, there's a good chance that Marvel might wait until 2023 because that also just so happens to be the 60th anniversary for the Fantastic Four. So we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, that should get you all caught up with all of Marvel's upcoming streaming and movies for the next couple of years. But I'm very curious to know what you all think. What was like the most exciting news that you heard about? Is there anything specific that you're really anticipating? Let me know what you're thinking in the comments down below. I don't know about you, but this news has got me super excited for the upcoming movies and streaming shows. But of course, this means I've got to get working on more videos and theories for you all to hopefully enjoy. Anyway, I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all. And before I get to that, I should probably come back to life so I can get back to work. Come on now, get up. Get up. Just 1 second. Get. Ah, man, what I miss? If you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it.